Hello, everybody. It's James here, and it's story time with Dutch episode 3 or 4. What episode is it, Dutch? 3 or 4? Have we worked this out on?
No, I think it's 4.
Oh, there we go. So, episode 4. Thank you very much for watching. Plugs behind me, the Rock and Owen Hart books on Amazon. And now let's get to the man, the myth, the mustache, Dirty Dutch Mantell. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing real good today, and sometimes this mustache has a mind of its own, and it's going to do what it's going to do. So that's the best I can get it today. So
Is this the longest the mustache has ever been?
probably because when it gets long, it gets hard to, like I said, it has a mind of its own, and it might work, and it might not work. So, but this is probably the longest. And if it gets much longer than this, I just trim it back a little bit. Just the tips will work better. But that's for mustache aficionados, if you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, it's a highly respectable mustache, even at the shortest of lengths. But are you never in the beard or mustache oil trade or usage of?
No, I use wax. I put wax on it because otherwise, I mean, to get this on its own, you're not going to get it. So you put a little wax on it. And wax really is kind of hard to find. So you don't go into like just drugstore and there's a big wax. Well, you might. But of course, I buy stuff like that, like everybody else does off Amazon. So they send me what they want. But it is wax on right now.
With I don't know if you watch UFC or Bellator or anything. There's a very famous referee, bald head, mustache down to his ball sack, plaited, braided all the way down. Have you never been tempted to go the record-setting mustache route?
Well, I've seen that, but I am kind of doubtful that's all true mustache. I think that's got some. What do the women get to
extensions?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I don't think you could grow that much hair from right here that gets almost a rope going down. I don't know. So I may be wrong, but that's what I think he's using. But it's still, whether he uses extensions or not, it is impressive looking.
His commitment to the cause, certainly. Do you remember? I mean, this was after you left the WWF, but Road Dogg Brian James, he always had, or for the most part, had a nice short cropped hairdo, and then one day he turns up looking like Whoopi Goldberg. And it got the whole bit going on. Do you remember thinking... I remember as a kid looking at it and thinking, man, he grew his hair quick. I mean, that's how stupid I was.
I don't remember that, but he did that every now and then because Brian is a man of many surprises. So he would surprise you. And he's a very intelligent guy. When you talk to him about things, you think, well, he won't know about this and he won't know about that. But I used to have some great conversations with him. Brian's a good guy, really good guy.
I would like to do some sort of... I think he's got a podcast out that's only been going a couple of months, and he's a hard man to get hold of, but I would have liked to have interviewed him as well, because you're right, he was a producer agent for many years, so he's obviously no dummy and knows professional wrestling inside and out.
A very smart guy. And he grew up in a wrestling family. His father, Bob, wrestled, and he just passed away, I think, a year or two ago. Great guy, probably in his 80s, and actually performed, I think, late into his 70s. So, and his brothers. So he grew up in a wrestling family, and he took up the family business, and now that he's still in it, even though he's not with WWE anymore. And that surprised me when Vince released Road Dogg. I'm thinking, why would, and he'd been with him, I don't know, at least this last run over 10 years or maybe or more. And for them to release him, you knew they were doing some serious cuts.
I think with Triple H's, not released, but relieved of duties after his health scare, that... So it's almost like you release the guy at the head of the chain, then you release all the guys who were his hires, who were his confidants as well. There was William Regal left, which was a huge surprise.
Well, when new management takes over, all the old management and even the vestiges, like that word, vestiges of old management. They just get them out of the way and they start fresh, which I don't blame them. But Regal surprised me, Road Dogg surprised me, and I've had a lot of surprises from WWE. Nobody is safe there. Nobody. I don't think Vince is safe. He might even release himself. That's what I'd like to read one day. WWE said, we would like to announce the release of Vince K. McMahon, and we wish him the very best in his future endeavors.
He wishes himself the very best.
Right. He wishes himself. And they're saying now, this is what amazes me. A wrestling company, or a company that started with wrestling, now is worth $5 billion. It's unbelievable. And somebody says, well, a lot of the WWE booking doesn't make sense. And I try to remind people, listen, they're not doing booking. They're just booking content. That's all they're doing. Doesn't make sense sometimes, but they're not in the make sense business. They're in the content business. So, and that's what they do. I watch SmackDown. I do a show every Friday night where I critique SmackDown and Rampage, the AEW show. And a lot of times the AEW show beats them. I mean, as far as viewer enjoyment, let me say that. But if you're watching SmackDown, and I may have said this before on this very same show, that you can almost predict who is coming up next because they have certain talents slotted in certain segments, and they stay true to that. Sometimes you can almost predict who is coming up next. I don't know why they do that, but they don't vary from that very often.
They're doing that with Cody Rhodes at the moment. They're always bringing him out at 10 p.m. because it's worked 2 weeks in a row where he's helped maintain a viewership on Raw. But as you say, it's probably most of them just fell asleep watching the show.
Mm-hmm. So Cody is at top of the hour between the shows?
Yeah, I think he's at the start of hour 3 of Raw, and he seems to be one of the only people who can nudge ratings in a positive way still.
Well, let me ask you, Cody Rhodes, do you think he's going to make that big a difference?
I think he probably has potential to, but it's whether he's allowed to. And I don't know. What do you think?
I think he's just going to. Cody Rhodes now Cody is no Dusty. See what I mean? For me to hear Cody talk, he's trying to be his dad sometimes, but he can't. Because Dusty could take an interview and make it exciting. Cody, when he's doing an interview, his voice doesn't go up or down, and his thoughts aren't that far-fetched. But Dusty makes you think of other things, and Dusty actually made you feel good when he was talking, because he made you want to laugh with him, and if something was serious with Dusty, he can make you feel it. I don't think Cody has quite that ability to do that. There's some people who can, but I don't think, and nothing against him. I think when he went to Hollywood, he's trying to do his acting skills now, and it just doesn't come across that way.
Chris Jericho sort of did the same thing when he went off for a few years, did some acting classes, and then he came, but what they call dropping into a character. I mean, I don't know anything about acting, but now it seems to be a new way of doing long-winded interviews, is not to just go on like crazy tangents, but try and tell like a very low-key story over quite a number of minutes.
Well, the jury is still out on Cody. I wish him a lot of luck. I understood that his agreement, his contract, was much more lucrative than he had in AEW. But if you took a guy in AEW and you give him $500,000 for what? To do one TV every week? That's a good payday. If you just got to do, you're making, I don't know, $10,000 a show. Would that be what it would be? I don't know what it would be for a 3-minute interview or a 10 or 12-minute match. I'd do it. What's in the news?
Oh, well, this is exactly what's in the news. You mentioned Bob Armstrong before. That would have been the perfect segue into our first piece of news because he wrestled so late in his life. And, excuse me with that massive burp, Ric Flair is coming back to wrestling for supposedly, quote unquote, his last ever match at the age of 74. He has a pacemaker. He was 10% chance of living a few years ago. And now he's back on it. He's back on the road partying again. And now he's decided he's going to get back in the ring and do one more match. What do you think his chances are, and what do you think of it in general?
Hey, when a guy hits 60, they may call it a wrestling match, but it's basically a walk and talk match, is what it is. I mean, you can get by with it, and I hope Rick, and I don't think he's thought this through health-wise because, and I don't even know what he's doing. I think he doesn't want to be remembered as a guy who just couldn't do it anymore. So I think he wants to maybe try to make one last payday, and the payday can't be that good, but I don't know why he's doing it. And I hope the pacemaker doesn't come unglued or whatever, it's held in there. So I have no idea why he's doing it. I think he's doing it because of vanity. That's exactly why I think he's doing it, because there's no other reason, really. And has his opponent been released?
No, it was supposedly going to be Ricky Steamboat. He's just come out within the last hour and said that it won't be him. He's turning it down, and rightly so. He had some tremendous health issues maybe about 10 years ago that I think saw him out of WWE for a long time or gone for good.
Well, yeah, I was thinking, they said one of his favorite opponents. You know who I think it might be? Ricky Morton.
He is teaming with Ricky Morton. Apparently he's teaming with the Rock and Roll Express against FTR and a mystery third partner.
And a mystery guy. I don't know who that other guy could be. Now, of course, Rick's going to stand in the corner, and he's going to get the hot tag, and he's going to come in, chop, chop, to chop, chop, and they'll do a layered finish, tiered finish, and then they'll cap it off. So, and it'll probably be good because if his participation is held down to a minimum, they can probably get by with it. See, when I first heard he was going to have a match, I said, I can't go 10 minutes. You just can't do it. I mean, you can, like I said, if you walk and talk, but it's a crappy match. So I wish him luck, and I hope nothing happens to him. Because who knows, Flair could go in the ring drunk. He may just have it down and just go in and say, hey, it's like old times, and I don't know.
I'm going to give you some people who are still wrestling at pensioner age and beyond almost. Kachika's still wrestling at 79. I don't know if he's Mexican or Japanese. I heard the name. Jimmy Valiant's still wrestling at 79, who I talked to recently. Vince McMahon, I suppose if you want to call that a match, was 76 at WrestleMania, the most recent one. Jerry Lawler still wrestling regularly at 72. I'll give you some other names of very old people who wrestled. Fabulous Moolah was 81, Mae Young was 82, Dory Jr. 79, Mil Mascaras 76. The most popular wrestler of 1975, Mil Mascaras. Terry Funk 72, Fujiwara at 72. You must have wrestled some really old people who had no business being in the ring over the course of your career.
I did. And you go in there and, hey, I have wrestled guys sometimes so old, I was afraid they were going to have a heart attack. And then sometimes I was afraid I was going to have a heart attack for doing their work and mine too. They were all nice guys. But there comes a point in your life you just got to say, I don't want to do this anymore. It's a health issue more than anything else, because you worry about them. Especially, I wrestled this guy one time, and it's a really, really hot day. And the guy was up in the ears a little bit, and I thought he might die of a heart attack. But it was so hot after about 5 minutes in, I got to thinking, I'm going to die of a heart attack before he's going to do it. But these guys, sometimes they don't know when to give it up. And it's not like singing country music or singing, in the music business. You just got to sing. This, if you're putting your body into it, you're banging around, and even getting in there in the ring in a situation like that is health threatening, I think. So these guys, and some people have, if they didn't save their money or they need the money, that's one thing. It's really a sad thought when you think about it. But these guys, I worry about them, and especially in their 70s, because they shouldn't be there.
Can you give me any names of people we might have heard of who are of just an age they should have never been there? There was a couple more that I didn't write down. There was like Gypsy Joe, who wrestled into his 70s. Lou Thez wrestled into his 70s, I believe, as well.
And Thez was probably the most capable one of all of them, because he was still in good shape. But you can have a heart attack. I don't care what kind of shape you're in. I was reading this guy. He was a marathon runner, and he's running one day and just fell over. And you don't expect him, because his heart, every time he runs, his heart gets a workout. Gypsy Joe was another one. Gypsy Joe didn't know how old he was. You know that?
No.
And he doesn't even know his real name. And he didn't know his birthday. I mean, his actual birthday. Because he was born in Puerto Rico, and I guess something is wrong with their bookkeeping down there, I guess, their record keeping. But he never knew his birthday, and I don't think he knew his father or who his father was. And there was several things with Gypsy that he didn't know. But I do know that he was a hard worker, and he would beat the living crap out of you. I don't care at what age. Now, and I left Nashville, I don't know, 3 years ago, maybe, but they put him in a nursing home. And if I had been there, I'd have went to see Gypsy. Good guy, always treated me well. I mean, he treated me the same every time I was around him. He beat the crap out of me. So there was nothing, but he was really, really a good guy with a really, really tender heart. You could tell him a sad story and he'd start crying. And you look at him, he's got tears, and I said, "You okay?" "Oh yeah, man, but I'm just thinking." So, and he's really, really good guy, but he shouldn't have been there. And and you've probably seen it, New Jack and Gypsy.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's a sad state of affairs, really, that video.
But if you really look at it, Gypsy was in his 70s then, and New Jack still couldn't knock him out. I mean, if this would happen when Gypsy was in his prime, somebody would have died that day. And I don't think it'd have been Gypsy. Because Gypsy was one tough. I mean, he could take it and dish it. So after he took it, you could actually blow up, beat him up. You still wouldn't knock him out. I've never seen him knocked out. Never even heard of him being knocked out. So, but if it would have happened when Gypsy had been, say, 20, 25 years younger, I don't think that would have turned out exactly the way it turned out. And actually, I've seen the tape. If I'd have been there, I'd have got into it with New Jack. I'd have went out there and I said, "What are you doing?" I mean, because he's a much younger guy, plus an idiot on top of that. I mean, I never had any problems out of him, but I don't know why that happened. A little independent show. I don't know what they were doing. What's that proving anything to anybody? The town's only got it's a very small town anyway. It's in Tennessee. Very small town. They ran regularly there, and I guess that New Jack heard how tough Joe was and went out there to prove it. But he was going to try to prove it on a 70-year-old guy. What's that prove? Nothing. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring those up about Jimmy. Because I asked him one time, "When's your birthday?" "I don't know." I went, "What? You don't know?" And I used to kid him all the time. "I don't know." And I don't think he even knew where he was born, really. I think he was born at home, I guess. But I guess in those days in Puerto Rico, they didn't keep the records like that. So he was just in the dark all these years.
Yeah, I think with the New Jack thing, I think it will have probably taken very little provocation, is as far as I can tell, because I've seen the one where he stabs some guy. I've seen the one where, he throws Vic Grimes off the scaffold, even though that may have been, I don't know what it may have been, but whether they.
And
Yeah.
he said, I didn't mean to speak over you there, but he said he was trying to kill him. When you throw somebody 20 feet or whatever it was off that scaffold, if it hadn't been for that rope, Vic Grimes would be dead. The only thing that saved him was the rope. And that had to hurt him the way he hit the rope, but at least it didn't kill him. Now I'm thinking, what if he had died? Now, how would the authorities have treated that? They'd have had to treat it as a murder, wouldn't they?
Well, it's funny with wrestling, isn't it? Because I think back to the Owen Hart thing, and they let the show go on. And some people argue, well, you can't disappoint the fans, whatever. It was like the second that Owen Hart hit the canvas, that place was a murder scene.
In Kansas City?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And the show went on. And what astonished me was that if you're going to investigate it, you can't let a bunch of other stuff go on in the ring at that time. And they did, which I don't know. That just amazed me that they let that go on. But going back to New Jack and that Vic Grimes, he had held a grudge for like a year against Vic Grimes for something that happened somewhere, sometime in the past. And he got him on that scaffold and tried to kill him. Now, first of all, you're not going to get me on a scalpel anyway. Damn sure not going to get me on that high, especially with a guy like Gypsy. I mean, a guy like New Jack. I'm not going. I said, they would have had to drug me up there, and I would have handcuffed myself to something that was locked down on the floor. You'd have had to cut my arm off to get me up there. And that's what guys do. They go up there and, they could just basically fall off a damn scalpel. So, yeah, put me up there with a psychopath. That's what I want. Just to top my career off and screw the damn wrestling until I'm 75 or whatever. Just put me up there with a psychopath on a damn platform about 25 feet off the floor. Really, it's about 33 feet off the floor if you count the ring. And just let me go up there and just die a natural death. I'm not doing it.
With somebody who holds a grudge against you.
But that's right. Who knows? So, but I've often wondered, sometimes a guy could actually die in the ring and somebody could intend to kill him, but yet in court, they could say, I did it too hard. I don't know. One time, I'll tell you the story. One time, it was Flash Flanagan, and I forgot, maybe Doug Gilbert. They were mad at these guys from this other little independent promotion, and somehow they convinced those guys from the independent promotion to come and sit in the crowd and start a bunch of crap, and they were going to fight them. And, of course, setting up an inter-company rivalry, I guess. Well, little did they guys know when they come over, it was all set up because Doug and Flash beat the living crap out of those guys. Beat them outside, beat them in the streets and everything. Of course, the guys that got beat up went to the police and took out a warrant or charged them with assault and battery. So when they went in front of the judge, the judge said, "Oh, what's this about?" And they says, the two guys said, "Well, we went to this wrestling match and these two wrestlers beat us up." "Oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. What happened?" Yeah. And he says, "Now, wait a minute. Are you two guys wrestlers?" They went, "Yeah." He said, "Case dismissed. Get out of my court." Threw it out because he thought they wasted the court's time. And But at the same time, something serious could have happened, but they would throw it out because it's pro wrestling. See, that between real and being concocted or constructed is a very thin line. And if somebody dies, that could be right in that thin line area too. So who's to say where the law comes in on this?
And that goes both ways. I'm sorry for talking over you. That goes both ways as well, because if somebody dies in the ring, let's say for a heart attack, Ox Baker, then they can use that for their character, and then it can be a weird silver lining plus.
You know, Ox Baker, speaking of him, and I hadn't heard that name in years, but I used to travel with him. Hilarious guy. But he killed, well, he didn't kill. Ray Gunkel was his first victim, they said. And I was with Ox that night. We were in Savannah, Georgia. And we lived in Atlanta, which is about 200 something miles away. And we knew Ray Gunkel had died in the dressing room that night. And later on, one of the other wrestlers, one of the Torres brothers, he died too in a match with Ox. That's where he got the heart punch. That's where he got the reputation behind it. So, and I often told Ox, I said, well, if the heart punch doesn't kill him, the match will. The fans. The fans, they're doing the boom, watching that match. But that's how things get started. And sometimes, you know, life got in the way, and Ox was always branded with the heart punch guy, and he could kill you.
I don't know who it was who told me. Maybe it was you, or because you've not heard the name in a while, maybe it wasn't. But apparently he was a very good opera singer.
Ox had a great voice. He'd get in the car and he'd go, whoa. He was, see, you see the guy was, he had a mustache, coming down like this too. And when he would go into restaurants, like say we had what they call waffle houses. It's like a little, it's a yellow and building and you can see in. But he would go in there and sometimes he'd be kidding around. He'd take coffee. He'd serve everybody coffee. He's acting stupid. And the people liked him. Very likable guy. But also he was a great, great heel in Atlanta because he'd had those eyebrows going up like this. And he did great interviews. So, but if nothing else, you believe Ox Baker. You believe by his size. He's a big guy too. He's about 6'6", about 300, maybe a little more. But bald headed, had hair all over him. So he was quite a sight. So
did you ever get involved without meaning to be in a riot in an arena caused by Ox Baker? Because there's a very old piece of footage on YouTube, or was, where it was a riot in like maybe the early 70s, late 60s. Did you ever see anything with your eyes like that with him?
I never really saw it like that, but I did see the riot you're talking about. It was in Cleveland, and it was with Ernie Ladd. I think Ernie Ladd's the one he beat up. No, it was maybe another one. Johnny Powers, I think. And I think Ernie was in it and Ox was in it. Oh man. I could see Ox running now. He was a chicken. He was afraid of the fans anyway. He's afraid of his own shadow sometimes. But but things like that were easy to start back in the day. I mean, I don't think you could do it now. I mean, you have individual instances, but probably when I was around Ox, he never really had riots because it wasn't constructed that way. But in this particular case, I heard a story about it. It's because I think Johnny Powers was like the good guy then, and he knew his audience. And he said when these two big guys got him down, I think it was Ernie and Ox, and he said he knew the people would come. So I think he kind of tricked them into doing that, and they did it. And I think they told him later, we're never doing that again and it took a while to settle that riot down. I think it took 10 minutes because people, they didn't like Ox and didn't like Ernie at the time either. So, and I may have it right, I may have it backwards. It's been a while since I've seen it, but starting riots back in those days, a lot easier than it is now. I don't think you can start a riot now if you set the ring on fire. They just look at it and said, "Oh wow, that's cool."
What's next?
Yeah, ain't gonna top that.
I will move on then to our second piece of news. And Naomi and Sasha Banks walk out on Raw. Apparently this is a real thing. They were unhappy with creative direction, maybe contracts as well. We don't know the full story, but I thought I'd ask you, any stories when you were just talent, or maybe when you were booker, when somebody was unhappy with direction and just walked off and left you high and dry? I mean, there's many instances of Bruiser Brody doing that, of course.
Well, Bruiser, and I just saw his wife for the first time in 30 some odd years since the Bruiser Brody incident happened in Puerto Rico. I had talked to her on the phone, but I'd never met her. And ironically, I met her twice in 2 weeks after never even laying eyes on her for 30 some odd years. But and what was the question again now about?
Anybody that you know, either as a talent or as a booker, that just hated creative and walked out?
Well, a lot of guys have walked out, and usually over money. That's why Brody would walk out. They either give him his money or he'd just leave, which is business, really. You know, a lot of people doubted his just leaving right off the bat, leaving everybody high and dry. But if he made an agreement, he expected that agreement to be honored. And when they didn't honor it, he'd just leave. Ernie Ladd he would do that too. He'd make an agreement, and if the agreement wasn't right, time the first check come in, he'd bring it to their attention. And then if it wasn't corrected, he'd just leave, which they made their intentions known by not giving and honoring the contract. So, but have I ever done it? Yes, I have. But at the time I did it, I was not in a position like Naomi. I wasn't in a position like Sasha Banks, because it was just a different story. Now, I don't know why they left. I do think it was bad on their part. It was unprofessional to do that. And I could see why creative got upset, that they had to change it on the fly. And I read where they went to see Vince and they thought it was taken care of till it wasn't, because creative didn't like. See, they were trying to dictate, I think, to creative what they should do. And if you're going to do that, why don't you just take everybody's suggestion and just let the talent book itself? And I'm not saying WWE creative is certainly not the best, but talent, they don't know where everybody else is going either. So, and from what I understand, Naomi was going to go over in that match of Raw. What was it, a 6-way or something?
Something, yeah, six packs, whatever, yeah.
It's a stupid match to start off. I mean, and I think they got it in their heads that they were going to probably turn Sasha against Naomi, not that night, but down the road. And I can understand their concerns because they were working as a tag team trying to get that over. But before they get that over, they're trying to turn them. I get that. But you just can't go in there and say, here's the belts, we're gone. I mean, that's like doing this to everybody in the company, especially to creative and events. So I don't know what happened, but they should have tried to work it out more. If not only for their sake, for the fans' sake too, because now the fans are saying, "Well, what happened?" Now they're going to have to make it an angle if they come back, because people are saying, "Well, you just left, and for what reason was that again?" And they'll screw it up. I think they've already screwed it up, but But sometimes things like that work out for the best. But what they have lost with creative and with Vince right now is trust, because they were trusted that they would work for this company and get paid handsomely. You know what their contracts are? What do you think Seth Banks making?
I don't know. I mean, conceivable, maybe $500,000. I don't know.
$1 million a year?
Maybe half.
$500,000? I think she's making more than that.
Okay.
I think she is, because some of these salaries they reported me recently, I'm thinking, bull crap. They're not doing that. But if you think just Sasha Banks should almost make that much just off her marketing, off her merchandising. See, they can give these big salaries because they're going to make it up in merchandising, putting her in a movie, doing this, doing that. Because, see, WrestleMania week, I was trying to explain this to somebody. WrestleMania week, all it is, the WWE just prints money. That's all they do during WrestleMania week. It's 4 days. 2 of them are WrestleMania days. One day is an NXT game, NXT show. And the other night is the Hall of Fame ceremony. And all they do that whole week is just sell pictures, sell gimmicks, sell games, sell photo ops, sell photos, sign this, sign that. And you do this for 10 or 12 hours a day for 4 days. Well, hell, that's 48 hours dedicated to nothing more than making money. We're not even counting the house or the pay-per-views or however they sell that now and the TV rights to it. So they probably doing WrestleMania week. No wonder they made more money, 2 quarters ago when the pandemic was still alive. They made more money during that quarter than they've ever made before. It was like they made $330 million. That's unbelievable without running house shows. So to me, house shows is a liability. It actually costs them to go on the road. And it is expensive to go on the road, believe me. Because I heard 10 years ago, 30 years ago, this is when Vince used to stand around and talk to the guys. He don't do that no more. Vince was standing around, and I forgot. I'm standing there, I think Bradshaw's standing there, somebody else, and we're in Madison Square Garden, and something come up legally or something. And he said, you know how much it costs to rent Madison Square Garden for one night? This is 30 years ago. What do you think it was?
Was it like over 200,000, 150,000, 200,000?
$130-something thousand to rent it for one night. And that's not the total cost. To now, it's got to be at least almost probably $1 million or 750,000. I'm just guessing. I don't know. But it's very, very expensive to run that building. And it's very, very expensive just to run, say, Des Moines, Iowa. If you just think about running just a live event, Des Moines, you got to get your talent there. You got to get the ring there. You got to get the lights set up. You got to get out of the hotel rooms. You got to rent all the cars. You got to pay for catering. You got to pay for this. You got to pay for that. The house could do $130,000 and they could actually lose money. Hard to believe, but it can happen because it has happened. And that's just the cost of promoting.
It happened back in the mid-90s as well, though, when there were B shows where no money would be made. There was something you said before, and I didn't pick up on it. Well, I picked up on it, but I didn't stop you. You said that you once left a territory over a creative booking and just went. What were the circumstances of that?
Well, how many?
The most interesting one.
Well, I went to Texas one time, and I just didn't like it. They put me on a trip to El Paso or something. It's like 300-something miles. I said, I ain't making it. Instead of going this way, I went that way. And but that used to happen all the time. But at the same time, I'm saying nothing was tied up in me. I mean, nobody really even knew who I was, really. If they had a guy fill in, nobody knew me. So they could have had just a regular guy fill in. It didn't matter. And then I've been to Tennessee a time or two, and I didn't like it there and left. And I mean, I left Puerto Rico the same way. But the deal is this. Say you were a top guy, say, let's just say Texas. And all of a sudden, you get mad at the booker, or he gets mad at you, and you said, F you. And he said, no, F you. And I'll never work here again. He said, I'll never book you here again. And you leave. Let about a year go by. Then the territory, then the business goes, it dies. And the booker said, God, I gotta do something. And you're in a place and not making any money. You said, damn, maybe I shouldn't have left Texas. Then you have an idea, pick the phone up. And the guy said, I'll never book you again. And the wrestler says, I'll never work here again. And I figure, hello, hey, Bill, Dutch, wow, man, how you doing? I said, oh, I'm over here in Carolinas or whatever. And I'm thinking about making a move. Can you use it? Oh, yeah, hell yeah. So when business warrants, yeah, you can go back on those. I'll never book him again. I'll never use him again. And the wrestler too, I'll never work for him again. But it's what business dictates. If you think somebody can help you, well, those past differences, they fade into the background. They're not even brought up. And you go back working like nothing ever happened. That's what business will do for you.
Absolutely. So I'm trying to think how much time we've got left. We've got something that we're going to talk about at the end that we know about. But originally, I was going to say I watched In Your House 5. The only time I watch wrestling is when I'm in the gym. And it's good to see people far bigger than me to think, if I just lift so much, maybe I'd get there one day, and I never do. But it's a good thing just to have on the TV in the background. And I watched In Your House 5, and I thought, like I do with Don Morocco's show that I do weekly, I will go through a pay-per-view occasionally. I'll give questions regarding the pay-per-view. You haven't watched it. It doesn't matter. And we'll just ask some questions, and we'll see how far we get. And the first one I'm going to ask about is, and this is non-sequential at this point, In Your House 5 is famous for the hog pen match. Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley at the time versus Henry O. Godwin. I'm not even sure you weren't on the card. I'm not even sure you were in the building that day.
Year was this?
1995, December.
I was there. No, I don't know. I think I was there. I was there in 95, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the pig match, and do you remember what Owen Hart did with the pigs earlier that day?
Well, if it's Owen Hart and anything to do with the waste from either a human or pigs, I can kind of guess what he did with it. So
I won't go too much into depth. He put all the pigs into Vince McMahon's office. So I was wondering if you've got any Owen Hart or British Bulldog stories, pranks that stick out in your mind.
Well, this is a working story with Owen. We were in Huntsville, Alabama, and I'm working with Owen and somebody else. And I had a partner, Moondog Rex, I think was his name, Randy Colley, I think it was. And he wanted to do a dive off the top rope to me on the floor. And I says, Owen, that's a great idea, but I'd highly advise you when you come off that top rope to hook a parachute on your ass, because I'm not going to be there. No, I'll land. I said, no, Owen, you're not going to. If you just think you're standing there and a 220-pound guy just jumps on you, where are you going? You're going down, and you're going down hard without under control. And then Randy called it, and he was 300 pounds. Oh, I'll do it. Oh, really? Oh, I'll do it with you, Randy. So Randy did it. You know what happened?
I do.
Three broke ribs, and he was out of work for like a month and a half. Oh, I made the right decision. And Owen Hart he was cheapest not the cheapest, but he's in the running for the cheapest guy in wrestling. He could go on a trip for 3 or 4 days and actually come back off that trip with more money than he had before he left. And this was nobody, no draws or anything, because he'd have fans in the town give him a ride. And then he would stay at the fans' house. And then the fans would buy him food on the road or fix him food at their house. And he didn't pay for anything. So if he left with, say, $500 in his pocket, when he come back, he would have $500 or more because he didn't spend any money. One of the cheapest guys ever in the history of the professional wrestling is cheaper than Mick Foley, and that's pretty cheap.
They had a competition once, didn't they? Mick and Owen both had a competition once to see who could spend the least amount of money on the road during an entire loop. And don't remember who wins, but it came down to cents rather than dollars.
Probably. And Mick was very, very cheap. But Owen was, I think, cheaper. Because I think the fans liked Owen a little more because he was a little more friendlier and people kind of got his humor a little more than they got Mick's. But I don't know. That's life on the wrestling. That's life in the wrestling business.
Absolutely, ain't what you make, it's what you save.
You still remember that one?
I've heard it many times, yeah, and I think it rings true now as it ever did.
It's not what you make, boys, what you save. Just so that showed me that the guy that I heard it from, Nick Goulas, years ago in Tennessee, famous promoter, and he was a cheap bastard too. I mean, and he stole that line too. He didn't pay anything for that. It's not what you make, it's what you save. So.
Fine words as well. I mean, it's even finer when you're underpaying somebody and then you say it as well. So
I didn't hear that. What did you say?
I said it's a good line to say to somebody when you're underpaying them and handing over the wage.
Well, what he would do, Nick would get those Mexicans in there. And of course, they were all illegals. They didn't have papers, didn't have nothing. They just come across the border, much like they're doing today. And he would get them there and he would starve them to death. Then they didn't have any money to leave. So he had them coming and going. Didn't pay them nothing.
Oh, dear me. It's a wonder why everyone deserted him, isn't it? We'll move on for now, though. In the Hogpen match, Triple H is... In fact, before I get to Triple H, Hillbilly Jim Morris. I don't know if you must have known him or met him, at least in the WWF, but Memphis as well, he was there at one point. Was he Harley Davidson there?
Davidson, yes.
Some stories about Hillbilly Jim, one of the nicest guys out there, I believe.
Oh, yeah, he is. He played college basketball. Did you know that?
No, I can imagine it's huge.
Yeah, he played at 3 schools. I said, 3 schools? He said, yeah, he got a scholarship at all of them. He played at Western Kentucky. He played at like Kentucky Wesleyan or something. I don't know where. And then somewhere else. He would play a year somewhere, and then he didn't like it, and then he would move on. But he was a really, really good basketball player and got into wrestling business, God knows how. So I met him in Memphis. He was just starting out, but he was an athlete, and he had that mustache. And when Vince saw him, Vince was always quick to pick up on local characters. So, and he saw Hillbilly Jim, and he just made him a good old country boy, and it took him a long way. Because Jim, I remember on a WrestleMania, didn't they induct him into the Hall of Fame?
I don't know. I'll find that out one.
Well, he was giving a speech, and I thought they did something with him. And he says that his first WrestleMania check, I forgot what it was. And I don't know where he was on the card. He said he made 80 grand. And he says, I still have that money put away and I'll never touch it. I'm thinking, my God, he must have made a hell of a lot of money to take that 80 grand and he still has it. But I was thinking, though, if you put it in a fund, like 30 years later, it would be worth $1 million now. But he was a good guy, and Vince liked him. Vince put him with Plowboy Frazier one time. Remember that?
Yeah.
God, Plowboy Frazier was 6'10", the world's worst wrestler, and he was a hustler. He was a con artist. He would do all kind of stuff to make money, but I don't think any of them ever succeeded long term. He's dead now, but he was a character too. So putting him and Hillbilly Jim together was a natural. They didn't draw any money, I don't think, but the people liked him, I guess, just for a little comedy act.
Do you remember Jim working in the office at this time? Because he was part of the home video department, I think, in the mid-90s.
Well, he may have, but he worked with that. What was the name of the?
The Godwins.
Yeah. Hillbilly Jim worked with, what? He worked other than wrestling. He worked with a video company?
Yeah, Coliseum Home Video. It was part of WWF's videotape home video division.
And I was there with the Godwins. They did about the same thing, but they were a little more talented than Hillbilly Jim and Plowboy Frazier. They were a little more talented with that.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a couple more, then we'll go on to the final segment. The pay-per-view starts off with Razor Ramon and Marty Jannetty versus 1-2-3 Kid and Psycho Sid. A million different questions I can ask about all 5 of these guys. But I thought I'd ask this. Who caused more trouble on the road, Marty or Sean Waltman?
Marty. Marty caused a lot of problems. I mean, there's some stories I can't even tell here because, well, I could tell some stories, but I'd get sued. So, but I do remember on this particular flight, I was like in the middle of the plane, and Marty and Sean were in like the row next to the last row. And they had 2 girls back there and another guy. So, and then they recognized Marty and they recognized Sean. And, now Marty starts talking to them. And then the girls move a little closer. And now they're all bunched up back there. And I think Sean was still he was like in the last row of seats. So he was kind of going to sleep. So I looked back at Marty and he winked at me like, okay, something's going down. So we got up, plane landed, we got up to leave, and Marty just came up to the middle of the plane, and I looked in the back, and these are the girls and the guy. They're knocked the hell out. I says, what about your friends? He said, oh, that'll be all right. Didn't say another word about them or nothing. And then as we were getting off, I saw some people coming on. It looked like medical people and the police. So I'm getting the hell out of here. Nothing happened about it, but what he did, he roofied every one of them and knocked them out. He didn't do nothing to them. He just knocked them because they kept saying, oh, you wrestlers, man, y'all really know how to have a good time. And, man, you're always partying and this and that and the other. And he was just going along with them and just left them on the plane completely knocked out. I guess they found out later that somebody put something in their drinks, whatever they were drinking. But, I mean, Marty was far gone, so was Sean. But Sean didn't have anything to do with it. It's all Marty. And Marty would always start trouble. Well, not necessarily trouble, but he would start something and then he'd leave. He left those people in the plane just knocked out.
Is there any wonder that Marty holds the record for being fired from WWE? I think it's 8 times or maybe 9.
He don't care. He does not care. Now, he made a statement not too long ago about a dead body that they haven't found. Remember that?
Yeah, vaguely. He made a Facebook post, didn't he?
Yeah. And then they went out and they says, well, what is he talking about? Because sometimes they watch social media because somebody may inadvertently expose a crime they did and not thinking about it. And they went and looked in this lake, and I think it's a Ray. Marty's from Columbus, Georgia. Is where he's from, and it's a big army base. Fort Benning is there, and it's a sprawling army base. So who knows what is out in some of those rivers and lakes on Fort Benning or even around there. But they went to look and they didn't find anything, which is not to say they won't find anything. But see, a lot of people, if you know Marty, could he be just running his mouth, or could he be actually telling the truth, which is hard to tell. See, Marty works his own kayfabe with everybody else. He's in his own world. And I always liked Marty but I never hung around with him. I never went out with him because I had enough things going on in my life at that time without trying to complicate it with any kind of Marty shenanigans.
That's probably a very, very wise thing. I think we may have time for just about one more question, then we'll get to the main, not the main event as it were, but the final segment. And the next segment involves Ahmed Johnson, the next match. And you were apparently given Ahmed as a project.
I was. They had Ahmed there, big, jacked up, specimen of manhood. And Vince, I was trying to help the guy because I thought he has the body. If he just has a little bit of knowledge, it might help him. And Vince, I think, saw me talking to him one day, and he said, "Dutch, can I talk to you?" So he says, "I want you to kind of take Ahmed and tutor him just a little bit and just see if you could help him." I said, "Okay." So I was watching his matches and trying to critique him after the matches, but he wasn't getting any better. So the more I talked to Ahmed, the more I understood that he understands nothing about the pro wrestling business. He didn't get it. He was a big, and he thought his big body and his big muscles and his presentation should be enough. And I'm trying to tell him, no, it's not enough, because now you got to play the character a little bit. And sometimes that character needs to get hurt or injured or get a little bit weaker so he can finally stand up, because he was working against other big guys too. Vader, Sid Vicious, and these big guys. But he never got it. And I don't think he would ever get it. And Vince asked me one day, Vince, he said, "How's he doing?" And listen, he's my project, so you got to be careful in how you couch your description of his progress, which was zero. So I'm trying to say, well, he's improving, but it's really, Vince. I'm trying to soft soap it as easy as I can. But I want to tell him, this guy don't have a goddamn rat's chance in hell of making it in the professional wrestling business. I said, he just not. And time proved me right. And he was an okay guy. Again, I liked him and I got along with him really, really good. But when I'm trying to explain things to him, he's giving me that 1,000-yard stare. It's like he didn't get it. And he's looking at it, and his eyes told me he doesn't know. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. And I think shortly thereafter, I think Vince didn't officially take him away. I think we both stayed away from each other. but he just didn't get it. And I think Vince finally understood, no, that's why they have a training school now. That's why they have the developmental, because he had never really wrestled before. So they try to take him out of powerlifting, not bodybuilding, but powerlifting, and try to put him in a wrestling business. And it was a complete, utter failure. Totally.
Do the words great googly moogly mean anything to you?
What is that?
Great googly moogly.
I've heard it, but I don't know who said it.
I believe it was Jim Cornette and Bruce Pritchard who used to say great googly moogly to each other whenever Ahmed Johnson cut an interview, because nobody could understand what he was saying.
Nobody. I don't think he could understand himself. You know, he would say something and I'd go, what? You know, without trying to be obvious that I couldn't understand. I don't even know where Ahmed was from. Where did they announce him from? You remember?
Pearl River, Mississippi, they announced him from.
You know where that is?
Is it made up?
So, I mean, no, nobody could understand him. It's crazy. Oh, and I do googly. I remember Cornette and Bruce doing that one time, a couple of times.
According to Wikipedia, Anthony Norris was born in Lake Alfred, Florida, and his alma mater is University of Tennessee and Houston.
That is Ahmed?
Apparently so, yeah.
I don't believe it. Yeah. What did he play at Tennessee? He had to play some sport.
Tiddlywinks and table tennis, it says.
I don't even think he could play that. And he can't play checkers. Damn sure don't play chess. So I don't know.
All right, so we'll leave In Your House 5 there for now. There's one more thing that you wanted to talk about, you wanted to make more mention of. We discussed it on our last show, but you wanted to flesh out your opinions a bit more and a bit more of the backstory. So it is Tammy Sitch back behind bars. Sorry, everybody, you'll have to bear with me because there's a bit of writing. So for those who are unaware of the story, Tammy Sitch has been charged with a DUI manslaughter. March 25th, 2022, approximately 8:28 p.m., Tammy drove with a revoked/suspended driver's license, a 2012 Mercedes registered to her boyfriend James Pent, at speed down United States Highway 1 before smashing into a stationary car being driven by 75-year-old Julian Lasseter, who stopped for a red light. Mr. Lasseter was killed on impact. Another car that was stopped in front of Mr. Lasseter's car was also shunted into, with the occupants suffering minor injuries. I do apologise, there's more writing. On May 13th, as an update, a Volusia County, Florida judge revoked Tammy Lynn Sitch's $227,500 bond, which she previously made after her boyfriend put up his house as collateral. The judge said, Tammy is a threat to the community, and I do not feel that a monitor will protect the community. It is too easy to evade. So since I last spoke to you about Tammy, the toxicology report has come in confirming Sitch was 3.5 times above the Florida state driving limit of .08. Her blood also tested positive for presence of cannabis. Police body cam footage also appeared to show Tammy to be heavily under the influence, and an unsealed bottle of vodka was found in a car. In Florida, DUI manslaughter carries a minimum 4-year sentence all the way to 30 years with a maximum $10,000 fine. Sitch has a long history of continuing to drive after receiving DUIs.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree. I met Tammy when she was about 19 in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Nice girl, pretty girl, eager to learn. And then everybody did a conniption fit over Tammy. Of course, she was a young cheerleader type looking girl. Everybody fell in love with her. And then when she got up there with Vince, I think it was a little too much, too soon. And she got to believing that she was worth a hell of a lot more than what she really was. And she made big money for doing something she loved to do anyway. And she got in with the wrong crowd. And some people can argue that maybe she was the wrong crowd herself. And she got used to big money and being treated like a star. So when she got away from WWE, she went back to her own devices, which is Tammy Fitch, and she has been arrested since, I think, 2000. I think 17 times I read. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. And 7 of those are for DUI. Now, and I totally agree with revoking her bond. I totally agree with putting her back in jail, because that's the only way that the community is going to be able to protect itself from Tammy, because she's not going to stop. She's 50 years old. She's 50, and if she hasn't learned her lesson now, she's never going to learn. Because I think jail is more than just to punish somebody. It is actually to keep the citizens safe. And the reason I say that, and I'm so adamant on this, is because in 2012, my 16-year-old granddaughter, Amelia, was killed on the highway by a drunk, doped-up driver who had a rap sheet 15 pages long, had been arrested for DUI and drunken driving and all these things. And he was an accident waiting to happen, as was Tammy. So I have no sympathy for Tammy Fitch. I like her, but if she is going to be such a detriment or actually a danger to every other driver, it could happen to you. It could happen to your daughter, your wife, your sister, anybody, that you're going down the road one day and here comes a drunk driver and just runs into you and kills you. As is what happened to my Amelia, 16 years old, and this guy hit her head on and killed her instantly, which was the only saving grace to her, that she didn't suffer. And he died too later on that day, because they tried to give him some drugs for his pain, but he was so high that they couldn't even administer any pain relief to him, because he was already he was toxic levels. He was right at that toxic level that he could have died just from the drugs. So there is no sympathy on my part about Tammy. If they give her 10 years, it's 10 years probably well served. They shouldn't have let her out. They shouldn't have been so easy on her by just giving her a fine and taking her license away. Because what good are laws if you're not going to enforce them? Now, the same thing happened to Bill DeMott. His daughter was killed by a drunk driver. And I think she was 18, I think. But still, I don't care what age they are, when they take a member of your family that you love, and there's not a day goes by I don't think about my granddaughter. Not a day. And people ask me sometimes what these are. I got them on both hands. And you never see me without them. And they're just remembrances of my granddaughter. It just says, never forgotten, Amelia. And I wore them all the whole time I was in WWE, wore them every day. And the only reason I change them is because they maybe just get old and they break. And I get some more. I still got some more anyway. But I don't think she should be. And I think somebody said, you may have written, Tammy's a psychopath. If you read and I looked it up. Somebody said she's a psychopath, and I was like unaware of what psychopath really means. So I looked it up, and it's a person who is very friendly in social situations till something doesn't suit her, and she can be quick to anger and quick to criticize, and she's prone to violence, and she snaps. And so when she's out driving and she's drunk, she doesn't care. And Bill DeMott, he's calling for her to be taken out of the WWE Hall of Fame. And I didn't like her remark to him. She said, "Oh, Bill DeMott, why don't they take him out of the Hall of Fame?" "Oh, yeah, I forgot. He's not in the Hall of Fame." See, A smart ass remark like that didn't get her any sympathy at all. So I think if they give her, and I like Tammy, but not when she's going to act like this. I think they should give her 10 years and let her sit 10 years in jail, and maybe they'll save somebody's life. I hate to be that way because, and after my granddaughter's death, we did a law in Tennessee, it's where I was living then. We did a law, a state law called Amelia's Law, that said if somebody is convicted of drunk driving, they can be monitored by a dermal device. I think they just put it on, and it monitors your blood alcohol content at all times. So if you do start moving, and there'll be a record of it somewhere, and you're drinking, and they can put them back in jail. I think it's in effect now because it didn't go in effect right away because it costs a little money to get that going. But I think it's still in effect. But maybe if they'd have had one on Tammy, I mean, you wouldn't have had that 75-year-old man get killed just sitting there. And unless you're the family of somebody this happens to, always happens to somebody else, not you. But when it happens to you, it changes your whole outlook on it. So Tammy, I wish you'd have got better, but you're 50 years old. And Tammy, I'm talking to you right now. If you don't get it by now, I don't think you're going to get it. So since you're not going to protect yourself, at least let the community protect themselves. So, and as far as a Hall of Fame, I don't care if they keep her in the Hall of Fame or not. Doesn't matter to me. It doesn't affect my Amelia's outcome. Doesn't affect Bill DeMott's, his daughter getting killed. Doesn't affect. So I don't care. You can keep her there if you want to. Just don't let her drive anymore.
Absolutely. There's one more thing I'd like to make mention of, and these are two completely different cases. They're both in the news and they're both combat sports related. Is that Cain Velasquez was not allowed to post a $1 million bond for attempted murder. He ended up shooting the wrong person. And Tammy has killed somebody, and originally she was allowed to get out on less than $250,000 bond until the trial, until it was revoked. I find that so astonishing.
Well, we put lawmakers in state capitals and in Washington to make laws to protect the taxpayers. Now, Tammy might be a taxpayer, but she does a hell of a lot more harm than she does good. She's been arrested 15 times, 7 DUI. And when you get to, I've said this, when you get to age 50 and you don't get it, what's going to make her get it? No, I don't think anything's going to make her get it. So if you're not going to get it, put her away to where at least she doesn't become a danger to every other driver on that highway. And that 75-year-old man, my condolences go out to his family because they're without a grandfather now. And that's not something you can just take back. But get her out of the way. So, and she needs to be out of the way. She's always had crazy tendencies anyway. She always did crazy stuff. And I don't know if that's wrestling that did it to her, or she had the personality to allow it to happen. I don't know. But all I can say now is I hate the guy got killed, but I'm glad and I totally agree with revoking her bond. She don't give a crap about bond. And the guy will probably thank the court later on because she would have done something and they would have took that $227,000 from him, even if he had to sell his house. And I can't imagine that the guy would fall so deeply in love with Tammy. Did you see her picture when they arrested her?
Yeah, looked like a dropped pie.
I don't think it looked that good. She looked like death warmed over. And so if she went out and she killed herself, and I said a long time ago, she was an accident just waiting to kill somebody or something, because I knew it was coming, because you can't tempt it and tempt it and tempt it until it happens. See, she's claiming now, she barely bumped the guy. Bull crap. It doesn't matter. She broke the law. So
10 miles an hour, she claimed she was driving.
Yeah, that's what I heard. 10 miles an hour. She doesn't even know. And anyway, I hate it happened, but I am not sympathetic with Tammy Sitch's cause at all.
Absolutely. I think right there we'll wrap up the podcast. I will thank you, Dutch, for entertaining us and also for your candor, because I know it's not the easiest thing, by far not the easiest thing to talk about, especially. So I will thank you, everybody, for watching, and thank you, Dutch, and I hope to see you again soon.
Oh, thank you.